They once branded me as dead weight. So I handed them the mortgage bill and made the decision to start over in Florida. The moment that pushed me there is still etched in my memory. I was in the kitchen, folding towels fresh from the dryer, when their voices carried from the next room. They thought they were whispering, but after a lifetime of listening between the lines, I knew the difference between quiet talk and words not meant to be heard. "You need to bring it up," Clara murmured, her voice sharp with irritation. "Your mother can't live with us forever," she pressed on. "She's not contributing anything. She just takes up space." Michael tried to soften it, his tone hesitant. "She raised you, Clara." "That's not the point," she snapped back. "We've got bills piling up, constant stress, and she just sits there. She's dead weight." I froze in place. The towel slipped from my hands onto the counter as if my body had given up holding it. Dead weight. The words pierced more than they probably imagined. "I heard you," I said quietly, stepping into the doorway. My voice shook, but I made sure they heard every word. Clara flinched like a child caught stealing. Michael spun around, his eyes wide, fumbling for excuses. "Mom, that's not what she meant." "Oh, it is," I replied softly. "You just didn't expect me to catch it." Silence filled the room. They offered no defense, no apology. So I turned, went back to the kitchen and finished folding that last towel, though my hands trembled so badly I could hardly line up the corners. My heartbeat was steady, almost slow, but it thudded with a strange kind of strength. I reminded myself, I had survived far worse than cruel words. Still, words have a way of settling deep in the bones. That night at dinner my body betrayed me again. I was trying to set down a bowl of soup, but arthritis had been punishing me lately and my hands quivered. The bowl slipped. Hot broth spilled across the tablecloth and onto Clara's lap. "Seriously," she hissed. "I'm sorry," I murmured, reaching for a napkin, already ashamed. Before I could help, she smacked my hand away, hard, and then struck my face. The sting wasn't what hurt most. What burned was the silence after. Michael didn't raise his voice, didn't step between us, didn't even ask his wife what in God's name she was thinking. He just stood there. He looked at me, then turned his gaze away. And that was the moment it sank in, he would never defend me. Not even against this. Then the front door opened. "Mom." It was Anne's voice. My youngest, my daughter I hadn't seen in over a year. She stood in the doorway, suitcase still clutched in her hand, her face pale with shock. She had just come from signing her divorce papers. I knew that because 3 days earlier she had called me in tears, gasping so hard she could barely speak. Her eyes darted to my cheek, still red, then to the spilled soup, then to the way I was holding myself together like a threadbare quilt. And then she saw Clara. Without hesitation, Anne's hand whipped across Clara's face, the crack echoing through the room. Clara stumbled back, stunned. "You lay a hand on my mother again and I'll break both of yours," Anne said, her jaw tight with fury. Michael shot to his feet. "What the hell is this? You don't live here. You can't just waltz in and play the hero." And turned on him slowly. "Hero? You stood there while your wife hit your own mother. You let her call her a burden. You did nothing. She's not helping us." Michael barked back. "She takes up space just like you. Running home to mom the second life got hard. A divorced parasite." The words struck in like a physical blow. She flinched, her face twisting as if he'd slapped her too. "You're just like her," he spat. "Both of you useless." That was when I stepped forward. My voice was firm, stronger than even I expected. "Enough." They both froze. I turned to Anne first. "You are not useless." Then I faced Michael. "And you are no longer my son." His mouth opened, but no words came. I walked away, sat down in my old chair by the window, the one they joked about, saying I stared out like some restless ghost. But I wasn't a ghost. I was alive. And I was finished. For years I convinced myself that giving was the key to love. I believed that loyalty, even when offered in silence, would eventually be returned with warmth. I was wrong. I had sold my house, my small brick home with the peeling porch paint and stubborn plumbing, to help Michael buy his. That house was my life's proof. Every graveyard shift worked, every mended shirt instead of a new one, every vacation skipped. It was the house that held me through widowhood, carried Michael through college, and kept me standing through winters that nearly broke me. When Michael and Clara came to me expecting their second child, their voices carried that hopeful tone children use when they already know the answer. There's this perfect house, Mom, Michael said. Great schools, a yard, room for the kids. But we're short on the down payment. How much? I asked, not even hesitating. They told me the number. I wired it within a week. He never once asked to be put on the deed. I didn't want them to feel tied down by me or think I expected something in return. I told myself it was just about the children. A safe home for the babies, a place where they could grow without worry. Surely, I thought, they would understand the weight of what I had given. But they didn't. They offered me their guest room, or rather the small space wedged between the laundry closet and the garage. No window, just a mattress on the floor. Still, I convinced myself it was enough. I can be near the grandchildren, I thought. I can help, I can belong. And I did help, more than they would ever admit out loud. Every weekday I was the one doing the pickups and drop-offs, tending to fevers, chasing away nightmares, singing bedtime songs until their eyelids fluttered closed. I made dinner most nights, washed load after load of laundry, patched ripped backpacks and stitched tiny socks. I never once asked for a cent. Then one afternoon I spotted an envelope on the counter stamped in bold red. Final notice. The mortgage. When I asked, Michael brushed it off. Things are just tight right now. Clara's hours got cut, he said. I didn't argue. Instead, I paid it. Quietly. Then I arranged for half the mortgage to be drafted from my account each month. I never told them. I didn't want to wound Michael's pride. He was still my son. Month after month I covered that payment and neither of them asked where the money was coming from. Maybe they didn't notice. Maybe they didn't care. Clara changed first in subtle ways. She'd roll her eyes when I offered to make lunch. She corrected me sharply when I told the kids stories about our family history. Don't confuse them, Mom, she'd say. They're learning a different way now. Then the bigger remarks crept in. One afternoon she looked around at the toys scattered across the living room and sighed. I think we need more space. Maybe if the guest room were freed up we could make it a playroom. I stayed quiet, gathered my knitting and nodded. Another day I overheard her on the phone. No, she doesn't pay rent, but she eats, uses water, electricity, it all adds up. And once, while handing me a grocery list, she slipped in, might be nice if you started picking up your own food. I mean, you do go through a lot of yogurt. Michael never said a word. Each time I turned to him, hoping for the boy who used to defend me on the playground, all I found was silence. So I kept trying. I baked Clara's favorite bread, even after she dismissed my recipes as dated. I folded her laundry when she forgot it in the washer for days. I sewed buttons back onto her blouses. She didn't notice, and if she did, it was only to remind me how lucky I was that they had space for me at all. She said that more than once, like I was some stray taken in out of pity. Not the woman who gave thousands to keep their home. Not the grandmother who cooked meals and rocked their babies in the middle of the night. Just lucky. And Michael, my sweet boy, the one who once glued macaroni onto paper to make me birthday cards. He stood silently beside her, letting every word sink into me without protest. One evening I burned the rice. The pot hissed and filled the air with the smell of scorched grains. Clara walked in, sniffed and laughed. Well, I guess you really are getting old. Michael said nothing. That night I sat on the back steps, Florida heat pressing against my skin, watching the horizon until it blurred. I thought about the countless times I had given them the last slice, the warmest blanket, the best part of myself. And I thought about the house I had surrendered. The porch swing, the daffodils in the spring, the spot inside the pantry where Michael had carved his name in clumsy fourth-grade letters right beside mine. All of it, gone. Given up. Till I stayed. Because mothers stay. Even when they're treated like furniture. Even when their kindness is twisted into inconvenience. Even when their names are spoken more like burdens than blessings. But something inside me cracked the day Clara slapped my hand away from the soup and then struck my face. It wasn't just the sting of her palm, it was Michael's stillness, his refusal to move. That was the moment the shift happened. The moment pain hardened into resolve. And that resolve carried me somewhere I never thought I'd go. One Tuesday morning I picked up the phone and called the bank. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't cry, I didn't even raise my voice. Calmly, I confirmed what I already knew, that although my name wasn't on the deed, I was still listed as the payee for the mortgage. The woman on the other end was polite, too polite, the kind of tone people use when they're staring at numbers that don't make sense. Yes, Mrs. Harper, it shows you've been making partial payments since July, and also a large lump sum last December. That's correct, I told her. And would you like to continue these payments? She asked. No, I said firmly. I'd like to stop today. A long silence followed. I'd also like the remaining balance, all future correspondence and every financial record going forward redirected to the homeowners, Michael and Clara Harper. The woman paused, her breath catching as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. The woman at the bank spoke with the clipped tone of someone double-checking every word. Of course I can finalize that request today. Please do, I answered, steady as stone. And email me a copy of the confirmation. 2 hours later the letter arrived in my inbox. I printed it, folded it neatly and slid it into an envelope along with the receipt for my very last payment. Felt like sealing shut an entire chapter of my life. That afternoon I cooked lentil soup, Michael's favorite once upon a time, and a loaf of bread, the kind Clara used to praise before she decided my recipes were outdated. I set the table with 3 plates and right there in the middle next to the salt shaker I placed the envelope. It looked so small, so ordinary, and yet it carried the weight of years. When they came home I greeted them as if nothing had shifted beneath the surface. Clara entered first, kicking off her heels and letting them clatter to the floor. Michael followed, his phone still glued to his ear, his eyes avoiding mine. Dinner was quiet, just the scrape of cutlery, the tick of the clock on the wall. When the plates were nearly empty, I reached for the envelope and laid it between them. What's that? Clara asked absently, not even glancing up. I dabbed my hands with a napkin. That, I said, is the last mortgage payment I will ever make. He blinked, stunned. Excuse me. I turned to her, my voice calm but firm. This morning I called the bank. I told them to send all future statements to the legal homeowners, Michael and Clara Harper. From now on it's your responsibility. Her mouth opened but no sound came. Michael finally looked up, his fork frozen midair. Mom, he started. I heard you, I cut in. Last week in the living room. Clara, you said I was dead weight. That's not what, she began. Yes, I said, sharper now. It is. And so I've decided to take the weight away. Michael's cheeks burned red, his gaze falling to the table. For 3 years, I continued, I've covered this house, half the mortgage, the down payment, groceries, repairs. I've cooked your meals, raised your children, kept silent when you mocked me and turned away when you turned cold. I reached for the small suitcase I had tucked beside my chair and set it upright with a click. But now the givers are done giving. Clara shot to her feet, her voice rising. You can't just walk away. What about the kids? You can't dump this on us. I can, I said. And I am. Michael looked suddenly younger, like a scolded boy who didn't know how to make it right. Mom, please, let's just talk. I turned to him, my voice low, almost gentle. My son, you let her slap me. You let her call me names. And when your sister defended me, you called her trash. Every time you stood behind her, even when you knew she was wrong. His eyes glistened with tears, but his lips stayed shut. I'll be gone in the morning, I told them. You'll get the keys back. Convert the guest room if you want. Do what you like. Where will you go? Michael whispered. I smiled faintly. Somewhere I'm not dead weight. I rolled my suitcase to the foot of the stairs and climbed up slowly, gathering what little I had. A few sweaters, a photo album, my late husband's watch. That night, for the first time in years, I slept heavy and dreamless. Before sunrise, I brewed myself one final cup of coffee in their kitchen. I placed my house key on the counter. No note, no goodbye, just the quiet click of the door behind me. It was the sound of freedom. I didn't announce my leaving. I packed only what mattered. A week's worth of clothes, my birth certificate, pension papers, my mother's recipe box, and a photo of Michael and Anne as toddlers in the backyard, faces sticky with watermelon. That picture reminded me of a time when love felt simple. At 5:40 a.m. I rolled my little suitcase down the street to the bus stop, the wheels ticking softly against the pavement. The morning air was thick with stillness. A neighbor watering his lawn lifted a hand in greeting and I waved back, smiling faintly. He had no idea I was disappearing. The Greyhound bus was half full, its vinyl seats cracked with age, the air stale but oddly forgiving. I slid into a window seat and watched the city shrink, the place where I had lived as a ghost in my own son's house. I didn't cry. There was nothing left to mourn. The bus carried me south, through the drowsy hills of Georgia and into the warm breath of Florida. Hours passed in silence. I nibbled saltines from my pocket, scribbled a few lines into my journal, and then let my eyes rest on the endless sweep of fields. I thought of Anne, my youngest. Sarasota was her new home. The last time we spoke, she whispered through tears, "I think I'm done. I just don't know how to leave him." I knew that voice too well. I had used it once myself. And when I finally stepped off the bus, the Florida air wrapped around me, thicker, softer somehow, even beneath the burning sun. I stepped off the bus into the heat and the steady hum of cicadas, my small suitcase dragging behind me like an old companion. Anne's place wasn't far, a modest apartment complex just beyond the town's edge. I walked the last few blocks, past cracked sidewalks and sun-bleached paint, until I stood before her beige building with its chipped railings. My heart thudded as I climbed the stairs. 2 knocks, a pause, then the door creaked open. When she saw me, her breath hitched. "Mom," she whispered, and looked smaller than I remembered. Her eyes were shadowed, her lips swollen under a thin layer of makeup that barely disguised the bruises. The ring that should have been on her finger was gone. We just stood there, taking each other in, 2 women hollowed out by silence, worn thin by houses where love was conditional. And then, without a word, she stepped forward and folded me into her arms. It wasn't a polite hug. It was desperate, breaking, the kind you give when the dam finally bursts. I held her as long as she needed. No questions. No explanations. Just arms and warmth. Inside, the apartment was tiny. 1 bedroom, mismatched furniture, the air conditioner rattling as if it might collapse. But it was lived in. It was hers. I was just making tea, and said softly, brushing at her face. I nodded and sat at her kitchen table. She set a cup in front of me, then sat across and reached for my hand. We didn't need to speak. That quiet moment was enough. For the first few days she barely talked. She moved through her own home as though she were hiding, locking doors twice, flinching when her phone lit up, keeping her back to the windows. I didn't pry. I washed dishes, folded laundry, left notes by her coffee mug. I waited. And then one rainy evening the words finally slipped out. "He calls me garbage." Her voice was flat, her eyes fixed on the floor. "Not just when we fight. Always. If dinner's late. If I forget the trash. If I talk too softly. Or too loudly. If I breathe wrong." Her hands were knotted together, knuckles white. "He took my car keys last month. Said I don't deserve to go anywhere. Said no one would ever want me. Not even you." When she finally met my eyes, what I saw wasn't just sadness, it was doubt. "Was he right?" she whispered. My throat tightened. I reached for her cold, trembling hands. They were the same hands I once held when braiding her hair before school. "He's wrong," I said, steady and sure. "He has always been wrong." Her lips trembled, and then the dam broke. She collapsed against me, sobbing into my lap like she had as a little girl afraid of thunder. I stroked her hair and let her cry until there were no tears left. That night she told me everything. The bruises, the phone checks, the humiliations so cruel they barely sounded real. I didn't cry. I just held her. And when she finished, I whispered, "If you can't walk away yet, I'll carry you out myself." In the weeks that followed, we began to carefully unwind her life. She tucked away paychecks in an envelope I helped her hide. We listed what she would need, rehearsed what she might say, mapped out safe places she could turn to. Fear still clung to her. Fear always does, but I could see her spine slowly straightening. One morning she whispered, "I don't want to start over. I'm 39. I'm tired. What if I fail?" "You're not starting over," I told her, holding her hands. "You're continuing the story someone tried to erase." Something shifted after that. She began to smile, not the brittle, forced kind but real ones. She stopped checking the window every hour. She walked taller. Then one Sunday she appeared in the doorway holding a thick envelope. Her hands trembled. "Divorce papers," she said. My breath caught. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "It's time." I stood and wrapped my arms around her. She whispered, "You saved me." "No," I told her. "We saved each other." Because in her freedom I found mine too. Not long after, we stumbled across a small apartment above a seafood shop, 1 street from the beach. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And for the first time in years, I felt like we were both truly home. The apartment wasn't perfect. The paint peeled in places and the plumbing seemed to have a mind of its own, but the windows caught the sunrise like they were designed to hold on to beauty. And stood in the doorway clutching the lease, her eyes shimmering as if she didn't quite believe it. "Do you think we can really pull this off?" she asked, her voice trembling on the edge of hope. "We already have," I told her. A week later we moved in with nothing more than what could fit in a few bags. Clothes, a kettle, 2 folding chairs, and a second-hand sofa that carried a faint scent of cinnamon. We left the past behind, except for the pieces of ourselves we were still willing to nurture. Our life began to settle into a rhythm. And dusted off an old hobby from her college days, making handmade jewelry. She listed a few pieces online and I helped with the wrapping and shipping, learning the tiny tools and codes she used. We turned one corner of the living room into our little workshop, a jumble of boxes, twine, and tissue paper. Every sale felt like a spark, another small step toward her independence. I returned to baking, nothing extravagant, just small batches of cookies, bread, and rolls. We snapped photos, posted them online, and within weeks neighbors and even tourists were ordering. People started calling it mother and daughter goods and the name stuck. We didn't earn much, but we didn't need much either. Mornings became my favorite time. I'd wake with the sun, brew a strong cup of tea, and sit by the open window with my journal. Writing wasn't about remembering anymore. It was about letting go. I poured onto the pages everything I had carried for years. The disappointments, the betrayals, the quiet heartbreak of a mother's fading hope. But alongside that grief, I wrote about small joys too. The way the early light fell across Anne's shoulders, the salty scent of the ocean at dawn, the sound of her laughter slowly returning, fuller each day. And began painting again. Shells, little postcard scenes, simple frames we hung on our walls. She'd come home with sand still clinging to her feet, her eyes softer, her back no longer bowed. At night we ate simply. Rice, vegetables, sometimes a single grilled fish with lemon. We'd sit on the floor, music humming softly, talking about books or nothing at all. We didn't speak of Michael or Clara, or the house I had walked away from. There was no need. One night as I closed my journal, I glanced over at Anne. She had fallen asleep on the sofa, her arms crossed, head tilted back, lips curved into the faintest smile. It wasn't the guarded sleep of someone afraid of nightmares. It was the peaceful kind, the sleep of safety. Watching her, I felt a quiet certainty bloom inside me. I had chosen right. Leaving wasn't just about walking away from a house. It was about stepping out of silence, out of invisibility, out of being needed only when convenient. I had finally chosen to live, not as an obligation in someone else's story, but as a woman with chapters of her own still to write. I turned off the light and whispered, "Thank you." Not to God, not to fate, but to the part of me that had refused to be erased. The woman who packed her suitcase, boarded a bus, and found her way back to her daughter. The mother who stayed long enough to prove, "We're not broken, we're rebuilding." That night I slept without weight pressing on my chest for the first time in years. A few weeks later, the phone rang on a Tuesday afternoon. And was in the kitchen humming while stirring soup, and I was by the window trimming dead leaves from a basil plant. The number flashing on the screen stopped me cold. An area code I knew too well. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Grandma? Are you okay?" The voice was small, trembling. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I said, though my chest tightened. There was a pause, then a whisper. "Grandma. Mom and Dad, they're scared. The bank sent a letter. Something about foreclosure." I sat down slowly, heart pounding. "Dad's been crying," she continued, barely audible. "They fought last night. He said they're going to lose the house. He said it was yours first." Before I could respond, the phone changed hands. "Mom." Michael's voice, older, worn. He hadn't called me Mom since the day I left. "I'm sorry," he blurted out. "I should have stopped her. I should have spoken up. I was scared. I thought we had time." I let the silence hang before asking softly, "Why are you calling me now?" My words weren't sharp, just steady, almost tired. He hesitated, then finally said, "Because I need help. We need help. They're going to take the house. I tried to fix it, but it's too late. I know I don't deserve to ask, but please, come back. We can make space for you again, Clara." I let out a quiet laugh, soft and sad. That stopped him cold. That I drew in a slow breath and let my eyes wander around the tiny apartment, a space that always smelled faintly of lavender mixed with lemon polish. The walls were paper-thin, yet somehow the place carried a warmth I hadn't felt in a long while. "Michael," I began softly, my voice almost tender. "Do you remember the day Clara called me dead weight? I heard him falter, his breath catching like it had snagged on barbed wire. Yes, he whispered. And do you remember how you reacted? I pressed. There was only silence. So I answered for him. You did nothing. Absolutely nothing. And then you turned on your own sister, calling her a leech. You stood there watching while I was humiliated. Now, months later, he had the nerve to call me because the bank reminded him I still existed. His sob escaped him like a wound. Mom, please. I closed my eyes, weary but steady. I was a burden to you then, I said quietly. But I'm not anymore. Then I spoke the sentence I had carried with me for months, not out of spite but out of truth. I used to carry that house, Michael. Now I carry myself. He sniffled, small, broken. What do I tell the kids? I smiled, a smile he couldn't see through the phone. Tell them their grandmother is doing just fine. And maybe when they're older they'll understand what you never did. I hung up. No goodbye. No promises. Just peace. Some mornings and I wander down to the shoreline barefoot. She always insists on carrying her sandals, though she never once slips them on. I usually bring my journal, though often it stays closed in my hands. We simply walk shoulder to shoulder, letting the waves nibble at our toes and the wind pull the remnants of the past away. There's something about the ocean. It has a rhythm that feels like forgiveness. Not forgiveness of others but of ourselves. We don't talk much during those walks. We don't need to. Healing has its own quiet language. And is mending the can tell. She laughs more now, not loudly but honestly. Sometimes I hear her hum a song while scrubbing dishes. The bruises are gone from her skin, though I still catch the ghost of them in her eyes. Me. I find peace in small rituals. I plant herbs on our balcony. I mail handwritten recipes to strangers who follow our little baking page. I sleep without dread. I brew tea in silence and savor every sip. Then last week a letter arrived. Real mail, paper, ink, a stamp, and even a little heart drawn next to my name. It was from Lily. Her handwriting was uneven, shaky, like she had tried her very best not to mess it up. Dear Grandma, it began. I hope you are happy. I miss you. I miss the smell of your cookies. I miss your hugs. I told Mommy and Daddy that. Mommy cried. Daddy went outside. I hope I see you again. Love, Lily. At the bottom was a drawing. 2 stick figures holding hands in front of what looked like my old house. He gave me a huge smile bigger than the house itself. I held that letter for a long time. The edges were wrinkled, this in hugs backwards, the in Grandma oversized. But none of that mattered. I could hear her voice in every word, clear, small, piercing, like only a child's voice can be. I didn't cry right away. Instead, I sat in the sunspot near the window, let the warmth seep into my knees, and read her words again, slowly, line by line. Then I folded the letter, pressed it to my chest, and set it gently on the windowsill. But that night, when the apartment grew still and Anne's breathing turned steady in her sleep, I read it one more time. And that's when I wept, not from sorrow but from release. Tears spilled for all the years I swallowed words, for every moment I convinced myself silence was strength, for Michael's face when he chose not to defend me. I cried for Lily too, because children always bear the weight of what adults refuse to carry. Still, I didn't regret leaving. That was the difference I had finally come to see. Grief says I miss what I loved. Guilt says I should have stayed. For years I had carried both. That night I finally set one down. At dawn I rose before the sun. I sliced lemons, boiled water, and poured in a cup of tea she would find waiting for her. Then I sat at our little table, pen in hand, and wrote back to Lily. Dear Lily, I began. I miss you too. I told her my cookies still smell the same. That I had started growing basil and lavender, and sometimes I bake cinnamon bread just to fill the room with its scent. I described the beach, soft, quiet, with greedy seagulls always trying to steal my toast. I didn't mention her parents or the house. That wasn't her burden to carry. She was still a child, and children deserve to feel cherished, not caught in the crossfire of adult mistakes. I slipped a dried violet into the envelope, signed my name in my shaky but determined script, and placed it in the mailbox. As it left my hands, I thought of all the things I had surrendered over the years, and all the things I had taken back. My dignity, my voice, my place in the world. For years I shrank myself into corners, mistaking need for love. But love doesn't bruise you. It doesn't spit out cruel words in the dark. It doesn't slap your hand away when you spill soup or call you dead weight in your own home. Real love stays. It speaks. It sees. Now I walk under the sun with my daughter beside me, and not a single step is quiet. We are loud in living, loud in healing. She sells little jars of sand and poems on cardstock, seashells she's gathered. People buy them not because they need them but because her heart is in them and you can feel it. She hums when she cooks, sometimes off-key, and we laugh so hard we spill rice from our bowls. Last weekend we planted rosemary. She said it was for protection. I told her she didn't need protection anymore. She has herself and she has me. Sometimes we sit on the porch and play old records, sharing music that smells like memory. She reads me articles she finds online, and I tell her stories I never had the courage to share before. I used to move like a shadow, apologizing for taking up space. Now I occupy it deliberately, joyfully. My laughter fills the kitchen. My words take time. My memories matter because I matter. I'm not a burden. I never was. And if anyone says otherwise, that is their weight to carry, not mine. Years passed and our little apartment by the sea became more than a refuge. It became a launch pad. Anne and I didn't just survive, we lived. We said yes to things we once didn't have the energy or courage or hope to try. At first, small road trips. An old paper map folded so many times it tore at the creases. A thermos of coffee that always tasted faintly of cinnamon, the radio low, singing songs of youth. We drove through sleepy towns with crooked porches, through hills where fog kissed treetops. We watched spring flowers prove their right to bloom in the Smoky Mountains. We wandered Savannah in the fall, listening to the sidewalk stories if we only paid attention. On a wild whim, we flew to Oregon to see lavender fields stretch purple as if the sky owed them something. We laughed in motel rooms with leaky faucets, danced under gas station lights, took blurry photos with strangers, and slept under stars where no one knew our names. We weren't just healing. We were blooming. We became women who collected experiences, not apologies, who told stories, not excuses, and carried a new sketchbook everywhere. I carried my journal. In those pages we wrote about who we were becoming, not what we'd lost. She drew sunsets, bridges, hands, and shadows. I wrote about the sound of her laughter, the smell of a bakery in Mississippi, the woman I saw in the mirror, aging without apology. Sometimes we mailed postcards to Lily with no return address. Notes about seagulls, sunrises, stickers of fish, drawings of flowers. Whether she got them or not, we hoped. We had made a home from nothing, and for the first time in years we felt rich. But the past has a way of chasing you even when you think it's behind you. One humid afternoon I needed dough for honey rolls, windows open, curtains fluttering, air smelling like salt and cinnamon. The phone rang, an unfamiliar number. I let it go to voicemail. Then Anne's phone buzzed. Same number. We stared at each other for a long moment. Another call. Another voicemail. Then silence. Finally Anne picked up, pressed play. It was Michael. His voice sounded hollow, urgent, trembling. Mom. It's bad. Claire and I, we made mistakes. Gambling, debts, eviction. It's all falling apart. We don't know where to go. Please, call back. He wasn't angry. Not ashamed either. Just lost. I looked at Anne. She didn't speak. She blocked the number. I did the same. No rage. No glee. No revenge. Just stillness. We didn't need words. The truth was clear. We had given them more than money, more than shelter, more than they deserved. We had given them years, our presence, our patience. And when they could have chosen kindness, they chose power. When they could have stood for love, they chose silence. Now they were drowning in the consequences of their own making, and we had learned to swim without them. Sometimes I wonder if Clara still speaks to service workers with that same sharp tone. If she ever glances at that kitchen and remembers the woman she slapped. If Michael opens the pantry and thinks of macaroni pictures he made for me on Mother's Day. I wonder, just briefly, because those thoughts are theirs to carry now, not mine. Let the past chase its own shadow. Let the guilt sit in rooms where we no longer live. We had sunrises to catch, miles to walk. We were no longer part of that story. We had written new ones. Road trips, rooftop breakfasts, beachside markets, laughing until soup spilled on our knees. We had become the women they never believed could be free. And that's the thing no one tells you. Freedom doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. A quiet morning with tea in hand, breathing without waiting for anyone else to notice. We forgave not because they deserved it but because we deserved peace. We didn't go back. There was nothing left to fix, nothing left to explain, no one left to apologize to. If someone ever called you a burden, if they sighed when you entered, ignored you when you spoke, rolled their eyes when you asked for something small, stop right now and hear me. You are not too much. You are not in the way. You are not the reason things fell apart. You are not dead weight. You are breath. You are memory. You are presence. You are the one who stayed up when no one else would. The one who paid unseen bills, kept meals warm, doors open, hearts safe. You are a library of love and labor. Every wrinkle a story, every scar a receipt, every silence a vault of strength. You are not useless. You are not expired. You are not furniture to be moved at someone else's convenience. You are a witness to time, a vessel of wisdom, a survivor of silence. And if they've forgotten that, let them. Let them believe what they want. Let them sit in the house you once tended. Eat off the dishes you once bought. Breathe the air you once made safe. Wonder why it feels cold now. Because when a woman like you walks out, truly walks, she carries the warmth with her. And that chill, that ache they feel, is the absence of your grace. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone your savings. You don't owe anyone your old age. And you certainly don't owe anyone forgiveness if they haven't earned it. But if you do forgive, do it for yourself. So you can sleep in peace. So your hands no longer shake. So your breath doesn't catch when you remember what was said behind your back. Do it so you can laugh again. Not polite laughter but belly-deep, shoulder-shaking laughter that no one can take from you. So you can sing in the kitchen again, dance barefoot in the hallway, write letters to grandchildren who remember the smell of your cookies even when their parents don't deserve to. Do it because your story isn't over. Because your last chapter hasn't been written. Because you are still here. And there is nothing heavier than a woman who's carried the past and still chooses to stand tall. Wisdom doesn't shout. Wisdom waits. And when the time is right, wisdom speaks. So speak. Even if it's only in your journal. Even if it's only through your actions. Say the words you never thought you could. I am not invisible. I am not yours to use. I am not a mistake to be tolerated. You are not a guest in your own life. You are the author of it. Write endings that make you proud. Write boundaries that hold. Write silence that speaks louder than any insult whispered behind closed doors. If they only remember you when the bills come due, only call when they need saving, only see your worth after they've drained your heart dry, let your silence be the answer. Let your leaving be the lesson. And if they cry, let them, not because they miss you but because they miss what they no longer deserve. Some people never apologize. Some people never admit what they did. But some people live with the echo of your footsteps walking away. And that echo is louder than any words you could have shouted. To every woman told she's a burden, every mother erased, every grandmother sidelined, every wife replaced by convenience, every daughter who protected her mother when no one else would, I see you. I believe you. I honor the weight you've carried. Let the guilt stay with those who earned it. You carry your peace. Share this story if you've ever been pushed aside. If you've been told to shrink. If you stayed silent when you should have spoken and still chose to rise. Some women don't break. They rebuild. And this time they do it without permission.